Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. We're back on this 1200 bobber project. Actually excited to see if we can get this thing out on the road. You saw the last video. You saw we did get this bike running and idling after, I want to say, about 5 years. Again, that's just I'm saying 5. That's my estimate because we know it was in a barn for 3, and we know the previous owner before that had it sitting in a garage or barn or something like that. So we'll just call it 5. But our next steps are to literally get this thing on the road, going through the gears and seeing if it'll go straight and true. And that's a lot different than just idling. But let's dig into this thing right now and see what we need to do to make that happen. So after we ran it the other day, it really just kind of got put right here and we haven't done much to it. We do have the oil we need for both the engine oil and the transmission / primary. We are going to get that stuff changed today. I'm not going to put that on camera. I'm not going to bore everybody with an oil change. But just to kind of show a few things, because we do need to drive it. So just basic, simple stuff. We did get the battery in, and that is a brand new battery. This right here, I think I've elevated this to maybe being semi-redneck. I don't know. It's pretty bad. But all I did was just zip tied it because all we're going to do is drive around the neighborhood. So I just got it to where it's just not touching the motor. Before I get into all this. It is maybe touching a little right there. I'll just put a piece of rubber under it. The interesting thing is half of this wiring is return wiring coming back where it's actually plugging into the speedometer. We don't need that. We don't have a speedometer. So I'm contemplating on just literally cutting those wires out. But part of me would like to unravel them and fold them up and put them up under the seat. I don't know. I don't think anybody's ever going to try to put this bike back to its original glory days. It's probably not even worth the money, but we'll see. But we got that on. We do have to get, for the controls, this excitement right here. This was just hanging down on this side. So I do have the bottom for it. We actually had to buy a new switch housing. Got a used one. I would not recommend getting these aftermarket, but got a used one. Just so we can actually mount this up here. But you can see this wiring has been, I think what the gentleman did that had this before is he was just ripping the wires out that he didn't need for turn signals, for the horn, and what else am I missing? Is there anything else I'm missing? I think that's it. Yeah, turn signals and horn. Then, of course, everything to do with the speedometer. So we might follow suit. But everything's good. The tires are actually holding air, which is remarkable. Of course, we had it running and idling. I think the carburetor is good. We got that on. So we are going to get this oil change and we catch back up with you folks. We're going to be very close to running it. So very excited to see. I don't think there was anything over here. Oh, other than if you remember, the breather cover was painted black. So we figured out whoever had this was doing all this satin black with just some cheap paint. I mean, that heat shield literally rubbed off with just acetone. Same thing with that. So that'll all be repainted. We were just testing on it, but the carburetor cleaned up good. It's running good, and we're going to get this oil changed, and hopefully we'll be, fingers crossed, we're going down the road in this thing a little bit, albeit with redneck wires hanging down. Oh, and no tag mount, no tail light, no brake light, just hardcore. But we're going to keep it just safe around here. But anyway, we're going to get right to this oil change, and we'll get back with you guys as soon as we can. Oil change is complete. Primary transmission fluid is complete. We've actually got our clutch lever up here. Almost forgot what it is. Halfway adjusted. That clutch cable I think I'm going to need to reroute that or potentially get a 2-inch longer, but we'll see. And then this hilariousness. This is all factory. This is how they did it. Just to get it out of my way, because all we want to do is run it down the road. And one other thing down here, you can see it. This fender, I'm going to have to cut this where this mounts. You can see all the rust and everything. This thing needs to be gone through, but I'm going to need to cut that back. But it is like you might be able to fit 2 or 3 pieces of paper in between that. So we are going to take it easy. I do not want to gouge that tire because it actually holds air and it has a lot of tread. And it's in good shape. The only thing I do fear, this carburetor, I just have a feeling it's just not going to run good. I feel like there's something wrong with it. I don't know. I'm probably just being a little negative on it. But all we need to do is limp it around the neighborhood because all we want to do is see if the transmission will work. So let's get this thing fired up and see what we can do. See what she does. Okay, hopefully I'm coming in a little bit better on the audio, but that was very successful test. Other than the fact that the bike looks absolutely horrible right now, but we are now going to start taking this thing down. We're going to be removing front wheel, rear wheel, the belt, I'm sure, the shocks, the fenders, the tank, the pipes, the bars, the controls, everything. We're stripping her down. We're going to give this thing a full, we'll just call it budget restoration. The point of this project is to spend as little money as possible. But it definitely did good. One thing you probably noticed on the carb is the enricher right here. And these enrichers on these SNSs are not like a choke. They just dump extra fuel. The enricher just is not happy on this bike, but the bike started and ran perfectly fine. So I'm just going to leave it alone. Idle mixture seems to be good. Jets seem to be good. The idle speed could just use maybe just a tickle more of speed, maybe an eighth of a turn more. And then I do think the accelerator pump, which is adjustable, needs a little bit more. But that's it. And that bike wasn't even warmed up all the way, but all 5 gears work very smooth. So I think this bike is actually a pretty low mileage bike, just my opinion. But next things are to just start taking it apart. Kind of a shame. I kind of want to go drive it. It's pretty cool, but you know, there's no tag. There's not even a seat hold down. Just your, you know. Ooh, is that rubbing? Look at that tire. I think it's just the dirt coming off of it. I don't think so. And while we're at it, let's check and see if we had any lines from that fender. I do not believe so. I don't think so. Successful little shakedown, but we'll have to do some more shakedowns when we get it together. Like I said earlier, we got to adjust that clutch too. And that's about it. So not too bad, especially given that the tank actually has some rust in it, which was, I should have cleaned it first, but we're going to drop all that. That'll be demoted to lawnmower gas. But successful test. Brakes are good. Everything's good. We're going to get to these pipes first. We're going to kind of go through this kind of quick, but need to remove the pipes so we can get the jack underneath it. And also, these need to be painted. So unfortunately, somebody ruined these Vance and Hines exhausts. We tested a spot right there, removed it. You can see all the sandpaper marks. I just don't understand it, but Vance and Hines has really good chrome on their exhausts. But we're going to high temp these. We're going to remove these, I guess you call them, these sections with the baffles / mufflers in there and the heat shields, and we're just going to high temp paint them. It's the best thing to do because there's nothing underneath it to save it. And Vance and Hines are quality pipes. This bike would look better with something a little more aggressive, but we're trying to keep the cost down. That's the whole point of this. Boy, that one was just hanging in there. Jeez. Whew. Oh, thank you. Whew. She was on there. Oh no. Somebody did a no-no. Guys, when you replace your hose clamps for your heat shields, make sure they're in a, I've said this before on other videos, make sure they're in a position that you can actually get to them. It'll make this a lot easier. Whoops. Boom. Good. Since someone deleted on the vacuum operation for the petcock, which I completely approve of, we should be able to just take you a section of hose, run it from your petcock into the gas tank, turn it on, get that gas out of there. It's probably got some rust in it, but the lawnmower already runs like crap, so I don't think it's really gonna matter. Anybody knows a good mechanic? Maybe I could get a lawnmower that runs good. And you don't have to use the exact size fuel line. You can do this with anything. Heck, you could do it with a water hose if you wanted to. Wouldn't recommend that, but you could. To the top of the gas tank, gas can, put that in there, turn her on, put her on reserve, and then we'll get this tank popped off. This tank has got to be cleaned. It is full of rust. That's something else too. As good as this bike ran, is that it's got, the fuel's got ethanol in it, the tank's got rust in it, the fuel's probably 9-10 months old, heck, and it still ran good. You figure fresh fuel, clean out the tank, check the carburetor again, get some new plugs on it. This thing's going to run really good. This bike's really a good runner. We got very fortunate. And on to the gas tank. I guess the good news is I ain't got to worry about hitting anything right now. Oh, there we go. That'll leave a mark. Good. I had that one on there real loose. Let's see here. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and get this ignition switch off of here. Where is this coil? I can't even think about what it is. These are pretty easy to remove. This is something that, in my opinion, would be great to relocate down here, since we don't have a, well, you can't, yeah, you can kind of see it. So you can see this is where the horn was mounted and all that, but we're trying to keep this as a budget because we are going to sell this. So I don't want to just start, you know, $50 here and there adds up. Plus, it's just proof you don't need it. Then we'll go ahead and pull the plugs and move this gigantic monstrosity of a cable out of the way. When you do this, make sure you use the wrong size wrench, which is what I'm doing. I'm just going to go ahead and put this zip tie in here as a reminder that this is the key side. I can always go to the film if I don't remember. This is the best way to get this monstrosity out of here. This way? I don't know. Oh, I got to disconnect the dang ignition. That's good. Way to go. I knew there was something. I knew that was too dang easy. Always put these little screws, bolts, whatever. This is my method. Some people prefer to bag them up. Bag them up. But I prefer, you guys can even see this on the camera. Well, help me out here. There it is. Put this stuff back in there, guys. You won't, that way you won't lose it. Put the stuff back where it was. It makes it a lot easier, just like I will put the gas tank bolts in there. But this should be good. Be able to pull this, yep, all out. So we are ready to put this thing on the bike jack. That was pretty easy. When you've done this enough times, folks, it gets easy, trust me. Now we have the space down here. So just so you know, if you don't know, the reason we had to remove the exhaust to get the jack under is it hangs down just a little too much. And you can see down here, there are some rails on those frames, kind of like open box stands or open, you know what I mean. You can get the front of the jack on that piece, and then the other one goes right over here, and it lifts it up perfectly fine, and that keeps any risk down of, because if you put pressure on this exhaust, that exhaust goes up in here, and you could snap a stud going into those heads, and that wouldn't be good. You do not want to do that. So now we can get this thing on the jack, get these wheels off. We're going to get the shocks off, everything else that we can. And then we're going to start cleaning and restoring. One thing I like to do, folks, when you're doing this is, especially when you're by yourself like I am now, get your straps ready, and always strap these on the jack. I know that's like a PSA and we have different ways of doing things, but it helps. Have them ready. These Sportsters will go on there, but the frame is very narrow on the bottom, so just be very careful with it. Let's get this thing lifted up. Let's get this all the way to lock in. And when we scrub this bike, we're just going to roll it out there on the jack, which is what I like to do. That is it. We're going to get it strapped down and then proceed with removing everything else. We're going to get these wheels off of this bike. So this one actually has dual calipers. That's why I've got these buckets here, is to actually set the calipers on it. Obviously, if you just got one, you can just use one bucket. Or whatever you want to use, you can use stacks of boards. And then you're going to want to take the calipers and tie them off to something. You just don't want them to hang from these lines because you could damage them. My plan is to remove the calipers and the master cylinder and everything once we get all these, once I get this wheel off and part of this front end apart, just for cleaning. These should come off pretty good. Not too bad on the pads. Again, either this bike was really low miles or somebody has changed on the pads. Not sure. Whoa. All right. And these pads look pretty good. Just dirty. Pop this wheel off, or axle. Golly, what in the world? Why is it so tight? There. Whew. She was on there. That's rated for what, 25 foot-pounds? Get all that done. Just take your mallet, pop that through. And that's it. So I've said this before in other videos, when you take this stuff out, we do want to clean all this up and make it better. Just to make it, obviously this has got paint on the end of it. I want to get that off. We've got paint on this rotor, which is absurd in my opinion. But we're going to go ahead and just put these in here just to protect it. And so you remember where everything goes. Somebody painted the fork tubes, which you can see, those were painted, and that paint is literally flaking off with a fingernail. And I guess they sprayed them with the wheel on the bike, which I don't understand why somebody did that, because you can see how easy this front wheel comes off. But that should come off with acetone right there or something. You can see where there's paint. On the other side, same thing. But, and of course this thing's got those cool floating rotors, which just look awesome. But we will clean that up later, and you can see a spot right there where I just kind of tested on it. It's actually going to clean up pretty good. And then the front end, you can see here where the paint's coming off. Up there is where, I don't know if you guys can see it, but you can see where the paint came off there. That was just my fingernail. So I am going to sand these all the way down, or sand them down good, and we're going to try to repaint these because that just looks bad. And then we'll get these calipers up. But, and the funny thing is to get all these cables off, and sorry, I'm looking at the wrong spot. And to get them through here, I'm actually going to have to drop these fork tubes, which isn't too bad. As long as you know your measurement up top, you can lower them down. But we're going to get to this rear wheel and see if we can't get this thing to the point that it's pretty stripped down. So on these rear wheels, they're not that bad. There are a few more things involved. So you've obviously got a cotter in here, which is no big deal. But you've got the axle adjusters. So you do have to align this rear wheel when you put it back on. You've got them on both sides. There are, if you look at the Googles or the interwebs, there's multiple ways to do this. I'm sure there's an official way in the shop manual, but you know, why would we want to look at that? There are some almost like pinholes here that you can use to align. I believe that's what the shop manual says. If it does, feel free to call me out in the comments. I like to personally take pictures of the axle adjuster so I can get kind of in the ballpark where I was, and then I measure either from the center of the axle to that point or the center of where the swing arm mounts up. And also just check your belt deflection when you're done. You can remove these rear wheels without removing the caliper, but installing them without pulling that caliper off is, unless you're a magician, which I'm sure some of you are, to me is next to impossible. So, but other than that, it's not really much different other than just pounding the axle through. So let's see if we can get this sucker off. We can really start getting to some stuff on this bike. Come on now. There we go. These are 9/16. You just back them off. They should have no tension under them. Okay, let's see what we can do with this axle nut. That one actually came out easier than the front. Well, here's some interesting information. This is just proof nothing ever goes to plan. So these shocks, which are obviously not stock because they're tiny, this washer, this grade 8 washer here, which is good they use grade 8, is actually, let's see if I can show you, in the way of that axle coming out. So that is fantastic. To clean that up a little bit. So let's remove that shock bolt and get that wire. We're going to remove the shocks anyway, but let's just go ahead and remove that one bolt. What we'll probably do is just pull the washer out and put the bolt back in for now. But that would have been interesting, pounding on that. Oh, that's not even. Oh, I got a nut on the back side of it. I should have known that. Oh, that's like, golly, that's like barely on there. I don't know if I should be happy or concerned. There. Okay. Now I can get to it. All right. Where are we at? I don't know if this is going to break loose. This thing seems a little hung up. Bigger hammer. Always does it. You see I'm just trying to break this loose. So now this is nice and loose because when you remove this wheel, you got to get this belt off of there without damaging it, of course. So you just take the belt and you want to try to slide it off this way as the wheel drops down. All in one motion, of course. Okay, remember, keep track of your spacers. So now, can we get... Oh, it actually helps with that shock being off. I'm sure some of y'all are like, duh. That's actually good to know. So for future me, or anybody else, removing the shock makes me removing the belt a lot easier. Who would have known? It probably says it in the manual, but I'm not one to pay attention to instructions. Okay, and the good thing is this wheel's coming out without having to lift the bike up. Sometimes when you have a fender that comes down more, you've got to lift the bike up pretty high to get it to roll out. But as you can see, she just rolls on out. Perfect. So we can really see in here with this wheel gone. So a couple things on this bike. So this fender is custom. You can see there. So the fender itself is it's hard to see on this camera, but it's actually centered pretty good. The guy did a great job on that. A couple things to point out, and this is something for you guys to keep an eye on if you get a bike, especially if it's been hacked on. So if you look in here, right there, I'm not really touching it, but that is a piece of fender that's just kind of hanging down. You can see it's got the holes in it and everything. So what he did is he aligned it and just left that excess. Same thing on that side. this side's bent in, and it's maybe 2 or 3 thicknesses of paper from the tire. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to take this fender off and just start bending it that way with channel locks, because we might actually hurt the roundness or alignment, if that's the proper terminology, of the fender. So I'm going to try to bend it there with channel locks, and then we're going to take the angle grinder and clean that up, cut those tabs off. It should be fine. And then here, another thing I noticed too, this is not as necessary, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. So if you look here, it'll focus. Keeps trying to focus on the laundry stuff in the background. So if you look here, you got the flat hex head part of the bolt, and then you've got the nylock, which is good, with some threads hanging out. And that also is very close to the tire. So even though it doesn't look as good, and I guess I could do this with acorn nuts, that may be something I look for. I'm going to reverse those. So that's less thickness sticking out and less risk, because tires, when you put them through their paces, they will expand and contract, and you just don't want somebody getting a flat because of something like that. So pay attention to that, guys. Whenever you're taking these things apart and they're custom, just watch for clearance. But there's nothing left other than that. So there's nothing else that tire's going to hit. Also, on these, you notice here, these caliper brackets just kind of slide back and forth. There's actually an indexing point for them on the swing arm. That's also part of your spacer right here. That's what makes this so freaking tough to get everything aligned. So go ahead and remove this caliper. Just lift it up, lift it up out of the way when you go to install it, and there's no need to. One more little pro tip. That caliper is now empty. You've still got your breakage foot pedal up there. Put something in between that if you can, because if you hit it, you're going to collapse it, then you're going to have to get in there and pry it back open and all that, blah, blah, blah. It's not hard, but it's just something you don't want to have to screw with. Same thing on your fronts. Just be careful. You can see where I removed those calipers earlier, but we were pretty good. Just to kind of show where we're at. So we got everything pretty much removed, the fronts, and now we're probably going to go ahead and get these shocks off. Hoping to get the shocks off, and then the handlebars and controls today. So we'll be really close to just having this thing almost as down as far as we want. There may be a few other little odds and ends, but for the most part, and this will make it real nice and easy to clean it all up. But let's go ahead and get these shocks off. And as you can see on the shocks too, there is some rust, surface rust. We're just going to use the old steel wool on them. Maybe do a little paint on that black part, and then just polish these up. Just a little budget redneck restoration is all. All right, we can get this. Oh, of course, that had that. Wow, that was like that was almost like hand tight. I promise I didn't loosen that. Everybody's like, yeah, sure. Common theme with these shocks. Right off. Well, that's a lot easier to do when there's no wheel on the bike. You ever wondered if anybody's ever worked on something you owned before and they sat there and cussed forever because of something silly you did? I am sure that's happened plenty of times with me. Whoa, that was good. I should have thought about that. And I've also need to watch that caliper. So let me go grab something to get under that swing arm. There. Well, wow. This nut is like, it's like somebody, it won't let the socket fit on it. And of course it's tight as, you know what? Come on, people. Really? Oh. There we go. And we are going to replace these nuts. I've got some grade 8s that actually look pretty good. Just kind of dress it up. It's amazing how replacing little simple fasteners can just make things look better. So we have had some things done already here. Kind of did it off camera. You can see I lowered these fork tubes. Need to drop those so I can get all of this fun master cylinder and the lines. Boy, those lines they were butchered, buddy. Somebody went in there and bent them, but we are going to do the right thing and just ignore that and hope it just keeps working. Also, the brace that was on here, this Screaming Chicken or Screaming Eagle brace or whatever. Is it this side? Yeah, this side. 3 of the 4 Allen heads snapped off, which is what I figured. These things get tweaked over time, and they use them tiny little fine thread machine screws, which just baffles me. But that's a shame. I'll try to see if I can break some loose. I already put it in a vise with some big vise grips and channel locks, and nothing's budging them, so it might be trash. There's a date on this that says 94, made in Germany. I guess maybe BMW made this. Just kidding. So this might have come off an older bike or something somebody just had laying around and put on this one, since it is a 97. But anywho, we're going to get these controls off. Oh, and one other thing too, I did just go ahead and put that shock on there just to leave it hanging, just to keep that swing arm up. That's probably the smartest thing to do. But we're going to get these controls off, and then we're going to have this thing pretty much stripped down. All right, remove these. Should be loose because I've already had these loosened before. Already got this disconnected. Put this in my pocket so I'll forget it. This is the part right here where I've got to figure out a way to get this down and off the bike as one unit by myself. I'm sure it'll go fine. Somebody did replace on the bolts here though for the controls, which I approve of. They actually look pretty good. So that's neat. Got that going for me. When you remove these master cylindres like this, there is, inside here is a little button. That is for your brake light switch for the front brakes. Just be careful with that when you take these off. It's real easy to snap those. See how that button is. It seems like it's still got some good life left in it. Might be torn a little. All right, I don't know if this is going to show up on camera, worth a snot, but I've got to do this without tearing anything up. Oh boy. What a frickin' monstrosity. Come on. I'm sure this is the wrong way to be doing all this. Whew. Stay. Alrighty, that is that. Boy, look at that. Look at those lines. I mean, I really should replace those, but man, I don't want to. It's such a pain. It's not difficult, but I'll give it some thought. I'm going to left the bike over here till I move that out of the way. Got that in the picture. That's great. Of course, that runs right now better than this does, so it's got that going for it. But what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of flip. I'm going to flip this over actually so that the lever doesn't want to push up. And we'll flip the whole thing over, and we are going to slide that over to our motorcycle parts storage, which is AKA the underside of that truck. And we're just going to kind of keep these hidden until it's time to go on. We'll clean those calipers up really good till they go back on. But this just really helps us to get to everything up here. We'll take these tubes and put them back up, and then we can get these the bars off completely, and all we'll have is just the switch housings hanging down. So not too bad. Not too bad at all. Oh, and the clutch cable too. This is another one that's got me concerned. This is a tight bend. So I don't know if I want to if I need to try to move this on the outside. I have no idea. This is my first time having bars this narrow. Or maybe I'll just run with that. The issue is that I could not get my adjustment perfectly the way I wanted on my clutch. And I think that might have been why the engagement was a little funky. Plus I need to adjust it at the actual clutch basket itself, but that's minor stuff. We can figure that out. In worst case, a new clutch cable is not that difficult to install, but I think we can make it work. And for this side over here, this one's been off too. Oh, that one's loose. Well, that's easy. Oh, just so you know, here, all I did was put a piece of foam in there that's black. Make sure you guys can see it. Here, let me get in closer. Simply because I don't have the left turn signal switch. I'm not running signals, and I'm not about to go spend money on a switch just to put it in there. Maybe the next owner can do something pretty cool with it. That's the wrong size. This thing's probably going to want to just kind of flip off of here with all this tension right there. Okay. Well, go over the camera. There we go. That is down on the ground. This will Simply hang there. That comes off. Easy. Let's better get these bars off of here. Where these bolts, these Allen heads are just, oh good, these are not that tight. Good, good. These Allen heads are just not that great. Meaning, well, that one was really loose. Meaning the heads of them down in there are pretty bad. There. Well, there it goes. I just don't want to drop this top riser clamp. It's actually solid, shiny black, and it actually looks really good. So it's the one thing on this bike that actually looks decent from sitting. There we go. So cool. Cool little Z-bars. Not too bad. Actually kind of heavy, pretty stout. You can see this top clamp here. It's pretty good shape. All right, this fender. So I was able to get a channel locks on that fender. It bent pretty easy. That's good. And then marked it up with a Sharpie. Silver Sharpie, I guess. So you can see where to cut it. This should be pretty undramatic. I probably should not have said that. Means something dumb is about to happen. Oh, good. That was very loose, which is actually a good thing. Now, the real question is, will this drop on me? You know, I probably should have left that other one. Well, I'm making a mess of this. Oh, you know what? I bet this fender is just tight in there. That's going to be the drama, I bet. Now it should come on out. There. Not too bad. Just a simple, you can see the scribe marks. Excuse me. The scribe marks there. There. Oh, yeah, it's perfect. Look at that. Easy to follow. But it's close enough. It doesn't need to be, it's not seen. So what we'll do, we'll take the angle grinder, take that off, take that tab off. This has already been bent in or bent out. So this is the side that was almost hitting the tire. So we'll just clean that up, go around the edges, and this will be a very small piece to paint up. Not too bad. Well, it is all stripped down now. See, we got the front end much stripped down. Those fork tubes are not in there properly. We need to check the measurements up here when we put it all back together, because I do have to get that brake line back in. See all this over here, just all the wiring we got to get through, but everything is pretty much off that we want to take off. Well, there's a few things that I did notice. We got to get those pegs, those rear peg mounts right there. And something really funny, anytime you read official instructions, they say to disconnect the negative battery terminal. Well, I just left the battery in there while I just took the whole bike apart, so I'll get that out later. But that's probably going to wrap up this video, because we've got a lot into it. Next steps are going to be to start cleaning, painting. We've got to get the gas tank, the rust stripped out of it, many other things. Got to paint these front fork legs, got to do some paint back here on this frame because somebody decided to rattle can part of the frame flat black, which is extremely irritating. I really wish it was just the factory coating on it. But because we got some rust spots there, and of course on the end where they hacked off the struts, which I approve of that part, we'll just tape all this off and rattle can it. But it is at a point now where it's going to be good to go and clean her up. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope this video was either helpful for somebody or you enjoyed it, but we definitely got some more to come on this bike because we got a long way to go. But so far, kind of digging it. I think it's coming out pretty good. The bike runs great. It goes down the road great. We just need to get all this stuff cleaned up, repainted, you name it, and get it all back together. And we have a few parts to buy, but I think all in, we're probably going to be like maybe only $500 into this bike, which is quite remarkable considering what we bought it for. But don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll see future videos coming out. We got to start getting into the paint on this and getting it cleaned up and getting it back together and so forth. So there's a long way to go, but We will chat with you guys next time.